Well, the search for a missing Michigan woman has shifted from rescue to recovery. 56-year-old Lynette allegedly fell off a boat in the Bahamas over the weekend. Now we're hearing from some people who knew her well. Fox News' Dave Spencer joins us live in studio with what former neighbors had to say about this bizarre and really tragic situation. Dave.
Yeah, Roop, we spoke with Lynette and Brian Hooker's former neighbors who are utterly shocked that Lynette could go missing during a routine boat ride. And although they haven't seen them in a few years, they described the couple as happy and eager to spend time with one another when they last saw him. Lynette and Brian Hooker used to live on the west side of the state in Kentwood. Now, roughly 5 years ago, their neighbors say they sold their home, bought a camper, and eventually made their way to the Bahamas. Now, police in the Bahamas say over the weekend, the Hookers were on an 8-foot dinghy. It's a motorized boat to get from one port to another. Brian told police that Lynette fell overboard with the keys to the boat, causing the engine to shut off. The next morning, Brian paddled the boat to shore and reported her missing. As for their former neighbors, they find it hard to believe that foul play could be a factor here.
Think about everything that has already happened this year. February 1st. An 84-year-old woman named Nancy Guthrie was taken from her home in Tucson, Arizona, in the middle of the night while a masked, armed man appeared on her doorbell camera. Her daughter anchors one of the biggest morning shows in America. The whole country stopped. Then February 22nd, the most wanted cartel boss in all of Mexico was killed in a military raid, and violence broke out across 20 states overnight. Everyone turned to look at that. And while all of that noise was filling every screen and every headline, something happened on a small boat in the Bahamas that almost nobody caught in time. April 4, 2026. A 55-year-old woman named Lynette Hooker got into an 8-foot boat with one other person. A 2.5-mile trip. Water she had loved since she was a child. She never made it back. And the questions that followed, the ones that led to a signed search warrant, a formal arrest, and 2 separate criminal investigations, those questions are exactly why you are here. Before we go any further, drop your city and country in the comments right now. This case has people watching from every corner of the world, and we want to know exactly where you are when you hear what comes next. Before we talk about what happened, you need to know who Lynette was. Not as a case. As a person. She grew up in Lenox County, Michigan. Her mother, Darlene Hamlet, said the water was native to her. She was swimming and sailing before most kids learned to ride a bike. The ocean was not something Lynette visited. It was where she felt most like herself. In 2023, she and her husband Brian launched a social media account called the Sailing Hookers. Their boat had its own Instagram page, SV Soulmate. Lynette described herself in 8 words: photographer, sailor, living my best life. And everything she posted matched that. Louisiana, Florida, the Bahamas, cinnamon rolls baking in the galley, snorkeling with sea turtles, laughing through storms. The kind of life most people only dream about. Her last TikTok went up 2 days before she disappeared. Her last Instagram post came March 29 from Marsh Harbor. She wrote about rain and rough water, and she made it funny. She sounded like a woman who had found her place in the world. But here is the question that stays with you once you know everything else. If Lynette was living her best life, why, just 1 month before she disappeared, did she quietly buy a one-way ticket home to her mother in Florida? She never used it. We are going to come back to that. Because that ticket is not the only thing she left behind. Here is what the record shows about April 4, 2026. Earlier that evening, Lynette and Brian Hooker were at a bar near Hopetown. A bartender named Ken, speaking to the New York Post, said the two stayed for roughly 2.5 hours. Brian ordered rum and cokes. Ken later told reporters something about the timeline that night did not sit right with him. We will get to why in a moment. According to the Royal Bahamas Police Force, Lynette and Brian left Hopetown at around 7:30 that evening in an 8-foot hard-bottom dinghy, a small motorized boat. They were heading back to their yacht, the Soulmate, moored at Elbow Cay. About 2.5 miles of open water. Neither of them was wearing a life jacket. That was confirmed by Richard Cook, fire team lead with Hopetown Volunteer Fire and Rescue. According to Brian's account, which he gave to authorities and later described in a phone call on April 7, the wind picked up suddenly after sunset. He said Lynette bounced off the boat. He said the engine's safety cord went into the water with her and the motor cut off. He said he threw a flotation cushion. He fired 2 signal flares. No one came. He said the last thing he saw was Lynette swimming toward shore before the current pulled her away. Then he paddled 4 miles, according to fire and rescue records. He drifted toward Marsh Harbor, pushed by 18 to 22 knot winds. He arrived at the Marsh Harbor boatyard in the early hours of April 5. A security guard named Edward Smith was the first person he spoke to. Brian asked for water. When Smith asked about his wife, Brian said, "She's in the water." Brian did not call police. Someone else at the boatyard made that call. Lynette entered the water near sunset on April 4. Police were not notified until around 4 o'clock in the morning on April 5. That is an 8 to 9 hour gap. Their yacht, with communication equipment on board, was sitting 1,000 yards away. Brian paddled in the opposite direction. Ask yourself, what would you have done in those first few minutes? Now here is where the case stops looking like a tragedy and starts raising questions that investigators could not walk away from. Let's go through exactly what they found, piece by piece. Start with the safety cord. On any motorized boat, the engine's kill switch lanyard has one job. If the person driving the boat goes overboard, the cord yanks free and cuts the engine, so the boat does not keep going without them. That is its only purpose. It is designed for the operator. The driver. According to the official police account, Lynette Hooker, the passenger, was the one wearing that cord on the night she disappeared. Brian Hooker was driving. That is not a small detail. That is the entire point of the device, reversed. Second, the direction Brian paddled. Brian Hooker is a former United States Marine. That is confirmed across multiple verified news outlets. A former Marine with open water training, on a boat that has no engine, in the dark, paddled 4 miles away from a yacht with working communication equipment that was sitting less than half a mile away. He arrived at a public boatyard 8 to 9 hours after his wife entered the water. Third, how he sounded when he called. Brian Hooker called his stepdaughter Carly Aylesworth roughly 12 to 13 hours after Lynette went into the water. Carly told NBC News that Brian sounded monotone and relaxed. She said she was in shock, not just at the news, but at his tone. She said he gave her the same account he had already given police, and then he ended the call. Fourth, the recorded phone call. 3 days after Lynette disappeared, a sailing friend named Blaine Stevenson called Brian to talk through what happened. Stevenson recorded the call. Brian did not know. Stevenson told CNN his reason was simple: he wanted to capture the locations Brian described and pass them to people who knew those waters. When Brian was later arrested, Stevenson published the recording. Brian's attorney told CNN she could not confirm it was her client on that call. Fifth, the devices. When investigators searched the Soulmate under a warrant signed by a magistrate, they seized a digital video recorder, tablets, and cell phones. Those devices are in investigators' hands right now. Their contents have not been released. The Royal Bahamas Police Force said publicly that the arrest was based on what they described as probable cause. A former FBI agent told Newsweek investigators will want to look at everything on those devices, including search history. Two criminal investigations are now running side by side. One from the Bahamas, one from the United States Coast Guard. Here is something that matters. The night of April 4th did not come out of nowhere. There is a paper trail. It goes back years. And every single piece of it comes from named people, confirmed reports, and public records. In 2015, Kentwood, Michigan police were called to a domestic incident involving Brian and Lynette Hooker. Both of them made allegations against each other that night. Officers found Brian with a swollen, bloody nose. Lynette told police she had been struck too, but officers documented no visible injuries on her. A prosecutor reviewed the case and found there was not enough evidence to determine who started it. The case was dismissed. No charges were filed against either person. In 2024, Lynette left Brian. She told her friend Marnie Stevenson the marriage had been, in her own words, real bad, and that she was not going back. She went back. In January 2026, just 3 months before she disappeared, Lynette told her daughter Carly that Brian had threatened to throw her off the boat. 1 month later, she bought that one-way ticket home to her mother in Florida. She did not use it. Lynette also kept private photographs on her phone. Not to show police. Not to file a report. Her mother, Darlene Hamlet, confirmed in a verified interview that Lynette took those photographs for herself as a reminder, for the version of herself that might, during the quiet moments, start to forget what had happened. After Lynette disappeared, her friend Marnie shared text messages Lynette had sent her during the 2024 separation with CBS News. Those messages are now part of the documented record. And then there is the Apple Watch. Darlene Hamlet confirmed that Lynette's Apple Watch has been recovered, the same watch she was wearing the night she disappeared. Investigators now have it. What it may show about that night has not been disclosed. Brian called Carly with the news roughly 12 to 13 hours after Lynette went into the water. Then he ended the call. Later, he left her a voicemail not to comfort her, but to give her coordinates for a flotation device that had been found. Here is what we want to know from you. Looking at everything in this case, what do you think is the one detail investigators may not have looked at closely enough? Drop it in the comments. People paying close attention to cases like this have helped move investigations forward before. We read everything you write. As of today, April 21st, 2026, here is the full picture. The Royal Bahamas Defense Force has spent more than 2 weeks running shoreline patrols, sea patrols, aerial drones, and underwater drones across the waters around Elbow Cay and Marsh Harbor. After studying tide data, wind patterns, and drift modeling, they are now running out of places to look. According to NBC News, the official Bahamian military search is expected to be suspended soon. On April 16, the United States Coast Guard brought cadaver dogs to the Abaco Islands to help with the search. That change in what they are looking for has not gone unnoticed. The U.S. Coast Guard criminal investigation, which runs completely separately from the Bahamian inquiry, remains active and ongoing as of this recording. Brian Hooker was released from Bahamian custody on April 13. The Department of Public Prosecutions was clear about what that means: no charges at this time, pending the outcome of further investigation. He is still a named suspect. He can be arrested again. On April 14, Brian told ABC News he was not leaving the Bahamas until he found Lynette or was told to stop looking. On April 15, the next day, he left. His attorney confirmed he flew back to the United States because his mother is seriously ill. Carly Aylesworth, Lynette's daughter, is currently in the Bahamas. She has given formal statements to both the Coast Guard and Bahamian police. She is retracing her mother's last known steps. The devices from the soulmate are still being analyzed. And Lynette's Apple Watch is in investigators' hands. Neither has told us what it knows yet. Lynette Hooker was 55 years old. She grew up beside Michigan lakes. She learned to sail young. She called the ocean her happy place, and every video she ever posted showed you she meant it. She kept photographs on her phone that she never showed anyone, proof she was collecting for herself, for the moments when she might need reminding of what was real. She bought a ticket home. She did not use it. Her mother, Darlene Hamlet, is 76 years old. In the days after Lynette disappeared, she was driving home from the Bahamian consulate in Miami, trying to get an emergency passport. She has said everything she needed to say in one sentence. "I love you, and I wish you would have come home." The soulmate is still anchored in Marsh Harbor. 2 investigations are still open. A family is still waiting. And somewhere in an evidence room right now, there are devices, there is a watch, and there is a recorded phone call that investigators have spent days going through. What those items reveal about the night of April 4th, and whether they can answer the questions Lynette's family has been asking since the moment they got that call, that is still coming. The trail does not end here. What the forensic analysis of those seized devices is beginning to show investigators is